saying?
Well, it's really a text message, right? So she sent me a text, and she's been texting me for the past couple of days talking about how she's been having migraines and headaches and all that type of stuff. And I was like, well, what's causing it at this point? Because we, explored a bunch of options. Is it dehydration? Do you need electrolytes? Are you not eating? Is it caffeine deficiency? And all of the different things. And she said, well, I think it's stress. And I was like, well, then what's causing you stress? She was like, well, work. And I was like, I was like, what about work essentially? You know what I mean? Like I wanted to kind of understand like what about work is causing you stress? And basically it was the feeling of wanting to like move on. I want to move forward. I want progression. I don't want to be stuck in the same spot. I've been here for 5 years. And I'm like, well, why are you letting that stress you out? Like, why are you letting it stress you out to the point where it's like physically causing you damage? Like it's harming you physically where now you have a migraine. And, it got me to start thinking about even myself. I'm like, when you get to a place when you're working and you've been there, once you get past the whole like glamour phase, right? Once you get past the honeymoon phase or something, when you're excited about a job and you're like, oh yeah, this is exciting. And you get into just the normal day-to-day rigmarole. After a while, you start to get to the space where you're like, I don't want to be here anymore. Like I'm mad, I'm depressed, I'm sad, my boss is agitating me, my team members are frustrating, and the work just starts to feel like it's too much and you're not being paid enough. And then you do get into this place where you start to get stressed and you start to be unhappy. And I was like, well, we need to really start to rethink that. Like, how can we reformat our minds to start, thinking, well, at least I get to work, right? Instead of I have to work. Because there's a lot of people out there who don't have the opportunity that we have, who don't have, what I'm saying, the jobs that we have, who don't make the money that we make. And it may not be a lot to us, but it's still a lot because one person's trash is another person's treasure. So I started thinking about this, like, I was like comparing down. I was like, I think a lot of times what we do, and we're taught this, we taught to compare up. We're taught to look at people that make more money than us. We're taught to look at the people we want to be. We're taught to look at the jobs. And although I think comparison is the killer of joy, you know what I mean? Which comparison can definitely leave you in a space where you're always feeling inadequate and incomplete. I do feel like if you're gonna compare, then you should compare down. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it allows you to be able to look at the landscape beneath you and say, man, I'm actually doing a lot better than I thought I was. You know, I know somebody now who has to wake up, every day, early in the morning, drive to work and like haul appliances. And every time I think about the backbreaking work that they have to do, I have to have an attitude of gratitude for what I have right now. Right. I have to really sit back and think like, man, like I could really be this person waking up every day having to do physical labor and I'm not. And I was telling my friend, I'm like, listen, you have a remote job where you could just wake up every day, sit on your couch in pajama pants and maybe even like a blazer or something and not really have to move ever. Or you still have the autonomy and ability to leave and go handle business and then come back and get right back on the computer. You have a lot of freedom and your bills are still paid. You have a house to live in. Now, if you were to actually look at those people who were less fortunate than you would find that you're in a great position. And that's not me saying that you should step away from what you want to do. Like, and that's where I can understand where you're comparing up. But that comparing up is not comparing yourself to other people, but instead comparing yourself to the person that you want to become and using that as the guide or the guidepost to where you're trying to get to. But we should never compare to a point where now you feel sad and depressed and it's literally causing you physical harm. It should never stress you to that extent. It should never put you in a place where now you're depressed or you're down and you don't have any kind of vigor or even appreciation for what you have. Because what's in front of you is something you appreciate because it's a blessing from God. You received a lot, and you should be able to look at the landscape in front of you and say, hey, I'm good. And I'm not saying that there are people who are like in very, very unfortunate circumstances, but we have to learn how to look at what we have and to say, you know what? This is good too. I want more, but this is good too. I have something, because there are people who have less. You know what I mean? Some people will argue with me and say, "Oh, well, why would I want to do that?" You know what I mean? I don't want to compare myself in any way. And I'm like, well, sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to look at the landscape. Like, let's think about businesses and organizations, right? Don't they compare themselves to other businesses in the market, right? They do. They're like, well, shoot, Walmart's like, well, at least I'm not Kmart, right? And Amazon is over there. We're like, well, at least I'm not a brick and mortar. I'm not Walmart. I don't have all of the overhead that they have, right? So there's always some kind of comparison, right? So I think that when you're thinking about comparing, when you want to develop an attitude of gratitude, you have to look at things that you could not have. You could end up on the street. You could end up jobless. You could end up losing everything that you have right now. So you should appreciate what you have, but it should never stop you from wanting to get to the next level. So with her, I was like, it's okay to want to move forward. It's okay to want to progress. I think this is I didn't come this far to only come this far was something that I saw or heard, and this was before it was in that song. But it was talking about when I get to the mountain, I'm gonna and climb a bigger mountain. When I reach my goals, I'll set bigger goals. As in, what I'm saying? I'm going to never be satisfied, but I will be grateful. I'm great where I'm at. I'm happy with what I have. You know what I mean? But I know that I can move to the next level. So now, instead of being something that's like, you know, a hindrance or a problem, it's just a challenge, right? It's an opportunity. So it's like, yo, I want to challenge myself more. I want to have better opportunity, but I'm not going to put myself in a place where now I feel like I'm ungrateful for what I do have. And I can't appreciate what I do have that's right in front of me. And I think that's really what it is. And that's really why I said you should compare down, right? Because sometimes when you're looking to the right, you're like, oh, well, you know what I mean? This person is doing this and this person. You're looking up, you're like, oh, this person has this and this person has that. That you tend to forget that you're actually doing good in comparison to the people over here. And there's a lot of people that's looking at you like, I wish I had. You also got to think about the times that you prayed to be where you're at right now. You got to think about how hard you worked to get where you're at. Because think about where you used to be. Think about the times where you used to be like, I wish I was this person. And now you're there and you're like, man, I don't like it. But if you actually thought about the person you used to be, you'd be like, man, you know what? That person is proud of me. That child who wanted to be this person is proud. You know what I mean? The poor version of me who's now living okay is proud. You know what I mean? The uneducated version of me that's now educated. You know what I'm saying? That person of me is proud. They're like, oh man, I'm happy to be this person because if I went back in time and I reviewed the person that I was before, that person would be like, man, I never thought you would get here. Or they would say, man, I'm happy you finally made it. And that's the gratitude that you should show. That's why you should never forget your past. You don't have to dwell it, but don't forget it. That's why they said never forget where you come from. Because sometimes when you review that, you can look back and say, you know what? I really did come far. But I didn't come this far to only come this far. You know what I mean? But I'm proud because I did come far. But I didn't come this far just to come this far, which means you're constantly setting those goals and them challenges to move forward. And like I said, when you start to get to that place, when you start to feel like you're stagnant, when you start to get to that place, when you start to feel depressed and you start to feel stressed and you start to feel down about where you're at, compare down. And sometimes that's even comparing down to the person you used to be. It may not even be the person outside of you. It could be you yourself. That's it.